So thank you. My name is Rebecca De Cicco. I come from Digital Node, a digital design consultancy. Big thank you to Maven for that video. I'm a huge fan of Gartner, who are, I guess, innovation experts who predict future trends and requirements for industries, and they help businesses grow and obviously offer solutions to them. So today I'll be talking about smart cities, BIM, and future skill requirements. And it's really about how technology will impact the future of our industry. Digital Node, if you don't know who I am, is a small to medium enterprise based out of the UK with offices globally. We support clients in a number of different areas, which include BIM processes and technologies, innovation and future processes which relate to smart cities, as well as education and skills growth, which is really where my passion lies. Established in 2013 in the UK, we now work obviously with clients all over the world, so it's a really exciting space to be in. We help British Standards Institute and global training providers. We work with government clients, again, both in the UK, Australia, and in China. And we have private clients and professional organisations that we support on their BIM journey and some of their technological requirements. So for me, today is about how, I guess, we look at what the global impacts of cities are and how we start to look at more intelligent ways to design and build our cities, not just buildings, which is where I think most of the BIM debate has really been focused on, but how we can focus on infrastructure and utilities, how that relates to smart cities and some of the trends that we're seeing now both in the UK and globally relating to how we can manage data on our cities and how that can translate into more effective solutions. And then, I guess, again, where my passion lies is skills. How do we ensure that we have the right people within our organisations to offer the right services and be able to support that across our business? So today, I guess, the context really, and apologies for the slide, the current world population really is going to increase. So I guess for context regarding smart cities and the technologies, we know that there will be population increases. What does that mean to the construction industry? We'll need more buildings, obviously, more infrastructure, smarter cities, and obviously people that have the right skills to deliver, again, which is one of the main concerns with the construction industry today. With the impact on our global population increase, we're also going to see that most of the world's population are going to live in cities. Again, what does that mean? Do we have the right amount of space? Do we have the right people to support those spaces? And how do we accommodate this large population increase that would obviously put pressure on both our infrastructure, buildings, and assets? So the skills issue not only relates to digital processes, but also to some of the labour increases. So we're having obviously a skills shortage in labour. And again, the work I've done across the world indicates that we have a huge problem with government standardisation. There's no, I guess, consolidated approach toward the way we manage some of our projects across government. And there are limited support mechanisms. And in the UK, it's fantastic, but globally, we have issues with support for smart city technology companies, and I'll get to that a bit later. So where are we today? We all know that BIM has been a huge topic in the construction industry in the UK in the last 5 years. We know that the government have been very aggressive with the approach to BIM. We know that there's been a great push for standardisation across our buildings and infrastructure assets. With that, the UK have led the race, and they've led the race because obviously they've predicted that BIM will become a very important part of the way we manage, design and operate, obviously, our built assets. The problem with this is that we are having huge issues globally with organisations across the world utilising British standards with no real understanding of what they mean. With this, we can obviously have to look at some of the skills shortages, which will obviously start to impact. Skills shortages exist not only in the UK, but globally when it comes to BIM processes, technology and application of those processes. One of my biggest issues, I guess, with most of the clients I work with is really understanding of terminologies, BIM maturity, BIM processes, even BIM uses, and some of those uses that support the smart city solution. How we have huge issues across our global, I guess, spread with culture and structure of government. Many governments across the world are very limited in the way that they push through and almost provide a business case for funding for these sorts of things. I'm seeing this across the US, Australia, and even in China. And unfortunately, there's still an unknown link between the BIM debate and how that relates to smart cities. And again, we'll get to that as well. Uh-oh. Worst nightmare. There we go. So the future skill requirements that we saw in the beginning video, and that was really a taster for me because that hopefully set the scene for you to really understand not only what we've been hearing across most of today's presentations regarding common terms like AI, digital twins, obviously robotics and off-site fabrication, but all of these processes very much relate to BIM but also are beyond BIM. And some examples, I guess, of really how quickly we've moved forward and we'll need to address some of the skills is that you can see here from this slide that the global spend on AR and VR and even the mixed reality process has doubled in a year. And that's a huge amount. And that's obviously putting pressure on some of the people we have within our organisations to support some of these processes. We're also seeing that Gartner have estimated that not only do we have a lot of information and data out there, but we have more than 8.4 billion things. And how do we address the fact that we have an accumulation of all this data up from more than 30% a year ago? Cloud computing, very good for the small business and the small enterprise across the world because this will allow, obviously, companies to be able to trade, globally trade, which again was what we're seeing across both the BIM and the Smart City solution. Digital twins, funnily enough, today we've heard about digital twins a lot. For me, I've heard about that term for across many conferences. And it's not just about a replication of an asset in a digital way, but it's also about how we interact with that asset to create, I guess, information and use that information to obviously utilise more intelligent business processes. And finally, we all understand what drones can do, but drones will be used in a more common place to obviously act as almost a replication of a human to monitor building sites rather than having to pay people to be able to actually be there. So some of these skills and I guess the processes that are supported by the new technologies have, I guess, influenced the way that some new role requirements will start to bleed through our industries. And I could guarantee that most organisations aren't even thinking about how they can start to allocate roles within their businesses to accommodate these very rapid changes. And it's a huge issue. And here are some examples based on the video that we showed you earlier. So, smart cities. And I'd assume everybody has a different determination of what a smart city is, but I guess just to give you a quick summary, a smart city really is a city or an area that uses information and communication technologies to increase the operational efficiency, share information about public information based on the government services and citizens' welfare. Smart cities vary across the globe, and the definition of a smart city really needs to be addressed so that we can allow for this globalisation to occur. As we saw earlier this morning, London, fantastic city, very much addressing the fact that these technologies that are evolving are ultimately going to support how we build the level of data and how we interact with that data across London. So only a few days ago, today's the 13th, so the Mayor launched his roadmap to make London the world's smartest city against some of the other structured governments across the world, such as San Francisco or even some of the smart city initiatives in Australia. So the support for smart cities in the UK is very strong, and this also relates not only to the way that obviously BIM and BIM-related processes can obviously kind of draw in synergies, but Innovate UK and the Department for International Trade really focused on, in the last 4 or 5 years, growing UK businesses and having support for UK businesses to be able to export skills. Now, that was a very kind of key driver for the UK government when it came to BIM. But when we look at the smart city scenario, the UK government is also very, very passionate about exporting our skills to support future missions. So Digital Node was selected as a BIM consultancy to support the Future Cities mission in Australia. Turns out I was in Australia at the time, so it worked out perfectly. But as the only company that offered a service, we offered obviously different I guess, advice to different government departments across Australia to support how Australia could become an innovator in the smart city dialogue. Innovate UK selected a number of different companies, and again, relating to some of the things I've already spoken about, we came together as a group of 18 organisations to support the smart city solution, and we looked at some of the obviously different offerings for these new and innovative startups, for example, DoorDeck, who offer a smartphone solution for entry into buildings, obviously through some form of app.
City Logic, who use data on the way that they manage infrastructure information to be able to build and design. Westfield, who look at autonomous vehicles and how autonomous vehicles will start to become commonplace. And most of these organisations, including my own, were then commissioned via a variety of different incentives in Australia to support the mission in government. So like I said, here are some examples of what these organisations offered. So as a BIM consultancy, I guess the relationship between the Smart City scenario and BIM was quite clear. We had a series of workshops that we performed over the course of the project, and there was a real misunderstanding between how BIM and digital construction or smart cities were related. We spoke about how smart cities and BIM were connected, how the information within the BIM process could start to support how information within a government could then obviously be structured to support greater decision making for government clients, such as large transport and infrastructure clients. So for those of you who don't know, much of the government spend across Australia is all infrastructure. So we're not really seeing a lot in the building space. We're seeing billions and billions of dollars being poured into infrastructure based purely on the geography and the size of the country and the fact that we need to be connecting people in cities. So as a consultancy, Digital Node supported obviously some of the government clients, and then were commissioned to support one of the largest government clients in Australia to understand how digital, BIM and smart cities could relate to each other. We discussed across the mission that that would certainly impact on some of the skill requirements that we'd need, not only for my organisation, but for other organisations on the mission. They included data scientists to help us analyse some of the enormous amounts of data that we were collecting across both the infrastructure and city space, digital specialists to automate some of those processes and support us in determining what those processes were moving forward. And then innovators. So like I said, there are a number of different companies that offer different solutions, but Innovate UK are really driving and supporting these small techie startups to actually create solutions that are currently non-existent. So the digital capabilities and some of the themes we spoke about was that there needs to be quite a strong digital leadership across government and common standards that support that. And again, with the BIM debate relating to smart cities, it's very important. But when we look at how data is shared across different governments, it's in a very ad hoc fashion. So common standards were also one of the things we spoke about on the Smart Cities mission, which also supported how BIM and smart city solutions could be addressed. When we look at common standards, when we speak about BIM, obviously the BIM Level 2 scenario have developed a huge suite of standards that are now adopted globally. As you can see here, we're using the UK BIM standards in Australia, China, Malaysia, and even other areas of the world such as Canada. Some of you have seen these. Obviously, they're part of the suite of standards, which are now really becoming commonplace as a reference across different countries of the world, which I think is a very exciting place to be in. Having said that, they'll become superseded by an ISO standard sometime in November, I've heard, to support how we can potentially allow for that standardisation of a process. And not only does that relate to, I guess, the standards that support BIM, but also the smart city standards. So for those of you who haven't seen some of the standards that have been out there for a few years, there are a number of standards that are being pushed across the UK government and the Digital Built Britain agenda, as well as the Australian government and the governments in other countries to support a consistent framework for smart cities, which will hopefully address some of these issues we're having with inconsistent terminologies. So for me, education is key, and I think global working really, and I'm proving as a small, agile global organisation that global working is our future. To be able to trade, offer solutions across different areas of the world, we need to have an understanding of what's happening, I guess, in the exemplar regions. And having experience in the UK and driving the BIM agenda in the UK, which obviously relates to how we can further offer smart city scenarios, really is part of, I think, should be part of any business strategy. Future skills are critical, and obviously R&D and supporting your staff or your people in understanding where they can start to build their skills in some of these processes is crucial. Thank you.